This episode is brought to you by GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco. Get the most out of your vehicle with GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco original equipment. The only parts designed, engineered, tested, and backed by General Motors. You can find your perfect fit for most makes and models and choose from 3 tiers of parts, including GM OE or gold and silver aftermarket parts. Visit gmparts.com for more information.
The Rev and the Rabbi.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Good morning. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend, this has been a very, very difficult week. In our city, in our country, 4 funerals in 1 week. And we have with us today someone who protects us. And that's the Fire Commissioner of the City of New York, the 35th Commissioner, Robert S. Tucker. Commissioner, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Before you get on the air, you said, it's painful, but we also live in a great, great city. When you hear the resumes of the people who were buried, I was listening to a funeral presentations today for a young woman who was with Blackstone. And Wesley LePatner. To hear her husband speak and all the other family members, you realize there is greatness among us, which makes it all the more tragic. But I think we also have to recognize that there are people who do great things to make it a better world, and we shouldn't minimize their efforts. Let's talk about, you've been involved in safety for many years, Commissioner. You look at this, and there are people who second guess. Well, if they had done this or they had done what good is it to second guess, especially by people who don't know, don't have the background?
I appreciate all of that, Rabbi. It has been a very hard week for first responders, for our entire city. And you're right, these people who perished so senselessly at 345 Park Avenue the other night, I'm literally speechless. I'm still shocked by what happened in our wonderful city. I don't think it's time yet to start to try to understand how this happened. I think what we need to focus on are really, and especially a young police officer with a pregnant wife. It's just broken the hearts of first responders all over New York City.
Yeah. Well, you're surrounded by people who are ready to sacrifice their lives to save lives. What is it in that DNA? Right? I mean, what is it? I mean, some people would never think of that. How's that possible?
Right. You're right. I was so proud of the FDNY on that evening. First of all, we have a firehouse with an engine and a ladder company and a battalion chief a block away on 51st and Lexington. Mm-hmm. They were on the scene almost immediately, rendering life-saving and care to victims who were shot. But then our rescue task force, our firefighters, our EMTs, our paramedics, who put on bulletproof vests and go into a building where there's an active shooter. If ever there was a time to thank a cop or thank a firefighter or thank a paramedic or an EMT, it's now. Because I witnessed firsthand in chaos with victims, our people going into the building, first responding in while everyone else was running out.
Reverend?
Yeah, I just, it's amazing the amount of stress that's associated with first responders, their jobs. We take that for granted quite often. I attended the funeral of the officer Islam at the mosque this past week, and the CO of the 47 precinct talked about the fact that often when police officers are looked at by the public, or they see the uniform, and they don't see that that's a family man. That's a person whose family is hoping that they'll come home at the end of the day. And now we have to think like that as citizens, because Julia Hyman, she expected to be home at the end of the day. It speaks a lot to what's happening in our society and how it's changing the way we live. Gentlemen?
Yeah, I mean, look, these are Julia Hyman and Wesley and the security guard, everyone that was taken from us. These were incredible people. I police officer, I was at his funeral. I listened to the funerals at Central Synagogue. These are super people. They're extraordinary people. At the beginning of their lives, who knows what they were capable of impacting? Who knows? I mean, at such a young age, they have already impacted so much, so significantly. It's just all of these tragedies hit home, but this one certainly hit home for me.
Maybe it says to us that we ought to deepen our appreciation for people. When you look at social media, when you look at some of the first 3 pages of certain newspapers, all you see are the negatives. All you see are the disheartening stories that really make it difficult to get up and go through the day. And then you hear these other stories and you say, my God, we really need to step back a bit and say thank you to all of those who are there for us, all of us who try to enrich the lives of their families and those privileged to know these individuals. But, let's be a little more deliberate before we start criticizing the other human being.
Every single day that I have been as the New York City Fire Commissioner, I have met and watched how brilliantly the FDNY operates. And some of the greatest human beings I've ever met, some of the most humble human beings I've ever met, doing some of the hardest, scariest work I've ever seen. And they do it without any question. You call us, we will come.
It's also a testimony to New Yorkers. I lived in New York City, grew up in New York City, and there's just something special about New Yorkers, especially in the face of crisis. If anything tends to unite us, it's whenever there's a crisis that we have to transcend all of our social and political differences and begin to extend a helping hand to each other. Has that been what you have witnessed, Commissioner?
Yeah, I mean, I see our firefighters, our EMTs and paramedics going out there every day, going way beyond. I know someone's going to say, well, that's what they get paid for. Of course it's what they get paid for, but they're going so far beyond what they get paid for every day. And they're so humble about it. And we should all be so grateful for our first responders, including, obviously, the NYPD, who did such a great job. But remember, we're all working together like a ballet or like a fine orchestra during an incident like the other night.
Yeah,
and I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, no, he raised a good point. That's what they get paid for, but how much can you really pay for a person's life? I mean, yes, we say that's what they get paid for, but I don't think they get paid enough. I'll probably get in trouble with this, but I don't think they get paid enough, because every day when they leave their home, they pray to make it back home. How do you live a life like that?
Can I just add something to that, Rev? I've spoken to firefighters over the years. even if you offer them more compensation, but for a different position, they're not accepting it. This is what they want to do. It's their
got to be
calling.
more than the money.
Right?
Yeah,
It's
more
their
than the money.
commitment. Right, Commissioner?
Yeah, believe me, they're not there for the money. You know that.
Yep.
They're not making enough that they could be there for the money. What they're there for is to serve the nearly 9 million people of New York City.
Yeah. Let's take a break. We're going to come back with more with Commissioner Robert Tucker, FDNY.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
When you're having a baby, there's a lot on your mind. At Northwell's Staten Island University Hospital, you can rest easy with our reimagined labor and delivery experience. Our new Grapuso Women and Newborn Center provides private suites, overnight accommodations for a loved one, and a top-level NICU, all powered by the team that cares for the most moms and babies in New York. It's care made for Staten Island and made for you. Visit northwell.edu/newbaby. Staten Island University Hospital. Raise health.
Learning through play starts with Lego Duplo. With Lego Duplo, toddlers can develop real-life skills while having fun with colorful bricks made just for them. Large, easy to grip, and safe to explore. When children express themselves with Lego Duplo, they build patience, problem-solving, and empathy. See your child learn perseverance and self-expression with everything they imagine and create. Visit lego.com/preschool to learn more.
Amazon One Medical presents Painful Thoughts.
I've been on hold to make a doctor's appointment for 23 minutes now. The automated voice has told me 47 times that my call is very important to them. I'm starting to think that they don't think my call is important at all.
With Amazon One Medical 24/7 virtual care, you'll get help fast without having to remain on the line to make an appointment. Amazon One Medical. Healthcare just got less painful.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
The Rev and the Rabbi.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
We are talking with the 35th Commissioner of the Fire Department of New York City, Robert S. Tucker. You know, Rev, I've said to you many times that in the Talmud, Jewish interpretation of the Torah, it begins on page 2, not page 1. And I think one of the lessons that we unfortunately have to learn in life is that sometimes page 1 is taken from you. How do you begin? Again, on page 2. That's something that FDNY, NYPD, and having gone through a week like this and other tragedies in the respective histories of the department, somehow rebuilding does take place. And Commissioner, you've seen it. You've helped implement it. I was talking to Commissioner Cassano this past week. By the way, he listens to the program, so you're being monitored while you speak.
He's a mentor of mine. I just hope he thinks I'm doing an all right job.
He's very, 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 very impressed with your accomplishments. But that also, there's a certain spirit. I mean, you have a choice. You can retreat and succumb to this passive resignation, or you can say, no, we're going to go forward. And I think you've shown us, as others have, that we can stand still. Talk about some of the things that you have done, you have seen, that have, are the catalyst for change.
Look, when I was given the honor to lead the FDNY by Mayor Adams, I didn't just take the job to coast along. I wanted to run it like the CEO that I am. I've spent 25 years running a business, and I brought those skills to the FDNY. So I don't just view myself as the FDNY commissioner. I view myself very much as the CEO of the FDNY. And I have tried in the last 11 months to tackle some of the problems that I think everyone would admit have been around for a long time. Namely, I'll give you two. I've tackled more than two, but I'll talk about two. The first problem is the emergency medical service, merged into the fire department from the Health and Hospitals Corporation 25 years ago, but really never merged. And I have undertaken to begin that process, to do everything from keep the same 10 codes on our radio system so that we speak the same language. Currently, we're not even speaking the same language on separate radio systems, to geographies. What we call FDNY Division 1 is not the same as EMS Division 1, so we have different nomenclature for the geographies in New York City. And to really try to bring some attention to what I think is, I've called it the biggest crisis in public safety nationally that nobody's talking about. There is a shortage of EMTs everywhere in the country, and New York is feeling the pain. We have lots and lots of migration from our ambulance to our fire trucks. Over a period of 4 years, you're able to do that. We have a recruiting problem because nobody wants to come work just as an EMT if it's not a path to improve your career by going to fire operations. And we're really tackling it at all levels. And then there's response times. You know, we have turned into a bit of a cab service for New Yorkers. People are calling 911 that do not need an ambulance. And I want to remind everyone, there is an E in EMS, and that E stands for emergency. So when you have a boo-boo, you don't need to call an ambulance. You don't need to call 911. And so if we could lower the number of boo-boos that we take care of, because we come to everything, we could probably save more people in cardiac arrest, because once we're at a boo-boo, we're not able to go to the cardiac arrest, and that person dies.
Commissioner, I'm glad we shifted the conversation to specifically your responsibility as commissioner. You respond to I think it's 1.5 million emergency calls annually, which includes fires, medical emergencies, hazardous material incidents, and large-scale disasters, of course. That's a lot. That's a high volume of calls that you have to respond to. So it's interesting that you say if we can cut back on the boom-boos out of that 1.5 million, it can be reduced dramatically.
Yeah, and the number is significantly higher. We do more than 1.6 million ambulance calls a year before you get to the fire calls. Remember, also 50% of our fire engine operations are backing up our ambulances. So the future. Listen, the future of the FDNY is EMS, and if we don't focus on it today, our future is bleak, and that's what I'm bringing to the FDNY today is a keen focus on EMS and pre-hospital care. And it's not just in New York, although that's where my responsibilities end. But FDNY is a leader in the world. And as FDNY goes, whether it's on EMS or on lithium-ion batteries, the rest of the world follows us. We have a high-rise fire symposium in New York City coming up. We've got firefighters from all over the world coming to New York City to learn how FDNY approaches high-rise fires. Everything we do in FDNY, we are the leaders in, and we have to lead in pre-hospital care as well.
So you said you need more EMTs. How do you do? So how does one? I mean, recruitment obviously has been going on for some time, but what else has to be done to get more?
Yeah, I mean, we've created, the back doors that have been created prior to my becoming commissioner have become the front doors. So as I said, the next 1,500 probationary firefighters who will be in our academy will come from EMS. Unfortunately, that migration does not have 1,500 candidates waiting at the door to become EMTs. We have less than 300, and ergo the crisis. And so we're reaching out to houses of worship, Rev, for example. We're reaching out to the military. We're going places that we have not gone in the past to try to entice people to come into the business of pre-hospital care. We're still the best in the world at EMS. But
I was just going to say, we've done several recruiting partnerships with FDNY coming in. You know, we have a long-term relationship with you guys. We have graduations for EMS, EMT, and firefighters, etc. So we have that partnership, but you're absolutely right. It's tough to recruit people into it. It's interesting that you say the future of New York City is EMS. What is it? The messaging that needs to be tightened up to get that word out there? Is there less interest in it? What is it exactly?
Look, it's a very hard job. It's a very it's almost unfair how hard we work EMTs and paramedics. It's at the call volume, we're talking about almost 5,000 calls a day. There's very little time to eat lunch and to go to the bathroom. And it's call after call after call. And what I really think would help the morale and help recruiting is if we could start to care for the sick more than we care for the boo-boos. The problem is it's demoralizing to go to a scrape. You know, when I used to play in Central Park as a young boy growing up in Manhattan, and I would skin my knee, there was no cell phone to call my mom or anyone else for that matter. I went home, and several times I went home, and then I had to go get stitches. I didn't call an ambulance. My mom took me to Lenox Hill Hospital near where we lived, and I got a couple stitches in my knee. Once my left knee, once my right knee, once my arm. Today you would be very disappointed in the public calling 911 for nothing near an emergency. And we arrive at these patients and their bags are packed. They're really just using us like a taxi, and we are not a taxi service.
Before we conclude, Commissioner, I think one of the things that you've taught me and others as well in the department is the best way to fight a fire is to prevent a fire. And I see cars that are parked near hydrants, double parked, blocking fire trucks from passing properly. I think we can all do a lot more to help the FDNY.
On that topic, I just can't believe how often I have to remind people not to park on fire hydrants. I just don't. Something's disconnected here. When you park on a fire hydrant, you prevent a fire engine from getting water to put the fire out. And now we've had several fires where people have died because a car was parked on a fire hydrant. Now, I'm not saying it's a direct correlation, but it slowed us down. And the truth of the matter is, I don't understand why I have to tell people, please don't park on fire hydrants. And they park on fire hydrants in front of their own homes for their own convenience. Something has gone awry here. Please don't park on fire hydrants. I don't know what else to say.
I think we tend to see it as a restricted parking space instead of an emergency tool that's needed in case of a fire. I get it.
All right. Commissioner, thank you. By the way, Rev and I are ready to volunteer to serve at the FDNY, become firefighters. Or you're not that desperate yet?
We're all too old, guys. 3 old men on this call.
Well, listen, I've been chaplain for more than 25 years, and the Rev recently became an honorary chaplain.
It's
a great honor. It's a great honor, and to be surrounded by great people under your leadership makes it even more special. Thank you for all you do.
That. Thank you, guys, and thank you for all you do. Yeah, thank you both.
Excellent.
Really.
All right.
Stay safe, stay strong.
Stay tuned for more of the Rev and the Rabbi right here on Red Apple Radio Network.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
This episode is sponsored by Friskies, who would like to tell your cats hi. Now, if that didn't get your cat's attention, there is one thing that always does the trick. Just pour some Friskies crunchy food in the bowl and you'll hear those paws come running. Works every time. With so many Friskies choices, you can always bring your cats running from their secret napping spots. There's always more to explore. See for yourself at Friskies.com or visit your local store.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Gatorade is the #1 proven electrolyte blend designed to hydrate better than water. So you can lose more sweat and raise your game. Gatorade, is it in you?
The Rev and the Rabbi.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend Bernard, we are not newcomers to sadness. Our religions teach us about sadness, but no matter how equipped you are, you're never fully equipped to cope with the heartache and the heartbreak. I was watching one of the funerals this past week of Wendley LePatner, young woman, 2 children, husband, parents, and you see people, who are trying to hold themselves up in the most difficult time, and you say to yourself, what answers can I give them? Somebody said, where was God at 6:30 at Park Avenue? Where was God? We don't have that answer. We don't know. But
it depends on how you look at it. God was there in the synagogue. God was there in the people who were supporting the family. I mean, God shows up. He just, we think of him showing up in a preventative way. The reality is, as you know, and I think your faith tradition teaches, is that we all have a human will. We have the power to choose, a God-given gift,
and
that we can choose what we do, what we say.
And I think we have to ask, what more could we have done so such a tragedy didn't take place?
Yeah.
How is it that someone with such mental challenges, right, was able to perpetrate the horror?
Well, I can understand people who have mental health problems and those who are in the extreme category. My question is, what can we do differently? And there are certain things we can do, because this perpetrator, and we're talking about the shooting that took place this past week. Guy drove all the way from Vegas, all the way from Las Vegas to New York. But the video footage of him walking across this significantly large plaza with an AR-15, with an assault weapon strapped to his shoulder. I mean, what were we looking at? Where were the cameras and those responsible for responding to seeing something like that on a camera?
Reverend, prior to that, what about the people who knew this individual, who knew that he had certain issues? Wasn't that a concern? Could more have been done to prevent this? I think that's something we're going to wrestle with. So when we say where was God, the other question is, so where were humans?
Yeah.
What do we do? That's the biblical lesson. You have to take that oath. I did everything I could. Leaders of the city had to come forward and say, I did everything I could, or we did everything possible to prevent this tragedy. And that's something we have to look at.
Yeah.
So where is God? Where are humans? Right.
Yeah, but you were there at the funeral, and this is where we as clerics play an important role in helping people deal with crisis like this. What did you witness and then we'll talk about the one that I attended. What did you witness at the funeral for? Was it Julia Hyman, right?
Yeah, no, Wesley Lepatner.
Oh, it was Wesley.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I found very uplifting was the presenters, the eulogizers. They spoke about all that she had accomplished and all the relationships that she enjoyed. They didn't just talk about her death. They talked about her life. And it was very important for her children sitting there to hear about how great, they knew they had a great mother, but to hear others say, all the great things she was able to achieve in her relationships with one another and bringing, so much comfort to those who are hurting. I think that's something that we shouldn't overlook, the positivity in the midst of the negativity.
Yeah, and that's important because even I was at the funeral because that was Wednesday of this past week. That funeral, right? And Thursday I was there at the mosque in the Bronx for the funeral for Didarul Islam, who was the law enforcement officer who was killed. And of course, there was a sea of law enforcement who were out on the streets. We had the governor there, the mayor, Attorney General Tish James came earlier because it's set up where you have one segment of the program that's just for women to come pay their respects. And then you have another segment for just men. Then you have another segment for executives, elected officials, and family members and friends. And that's one of the things that you and I have to be aware of, the etiquette that comes into play because we engage interfaith, Commission of Religious Leaders with the Cardinal, you and myself. We engage in interfaith, and it was wonderful to hear speaker after speaker who got up to talk about the humanity of this individual. Yes, he was a hero. The fact that he went into law enforcement, he put his life on the line. It comes with the job. You're worried about getting home at the end of the day. But he was more than that. He was a human being. He had 2 sons that he leaves behind and a wife who's expecting. So there'll be a child that will never get to see or know this man. They're Bangladeshi. One comment was made where he left Bangladesh, crossed the ocean, came to the United States, and participated by giving his life. And I loved what was said. He was called a proud immigrant. And aren't we a nation of immigrants, Rabbi, who come looking for the American dream, who come looking for a different way of life? Isn't that what America's about?
We wouldn't be here if it weren't for our families who were proud immigrants, who loved America, who wanted to rebuild their lives, start on page 2. But, I think sometimes when we say person's a hero, when I listened to the tributes this past week, I said to myself, these people are heroes not only on the professional, in the professional arena, but in their personal lives. A hero mom, a hero dad, a hero husband, a hero wife. The way they were able to raise such wonderful children, the way that, Wesley and her husband, Evan, shared such a close bond. He spoke about when they met at Yale, and he went over to her. wanted to introduce himself, and he said, my name is Evan, and I'm from Scarsdale, New York. She says, no, you're not. You're from Edgemont. What do you mean I'm from Scarsdale? No. My mother told me, look out for you. You're from Edgemont. You live nearby. You don't live in Scarsdale. But
wait, look out for you?
But, just the way they were, they could banter with one another and respect one another, but they saw heroism in daily, actions, in the way they cared for the families. They were heroic. And, of course, sometimes we wait too long to realize that we have many heroes in our midst. Today on the Jewish calendar is Tisha B'Av, the 9th day in the Hebrew month of Av. And that recalls the destruction of the temples in Jerusalem in 586 before the Common Era and year 70 of the Common Era by the Babylonians and the Romans, respectively. But Tisha B'Av is not the last page. We also went on and rebuilt our communities. And I think in the midst of tragedy, there is this irrepressible spirit that says, you can't stop now. And here's a father who has to raise 2 children, a mother who has to raise, there will be 3 children with the police officer, and the others have their own personal stories. But the human spirit says, let's do more as we go forward. Let's not stop here.
Yeah, and that's where community comes into play. That community where the mosque is, and even the precinct CEO, the commanding officer of the precinct, he's Muslim. And that is a strong Muslim community, Bangladeshi community. And to see that community come out, I mean, they filled the streets, Rabbi, after the funeral to stand in honor as they prepared, for the processional. And it was just amazing to see that kind of unity, which is part of how we're able to survive as human beings. We need community.
And you talk of community, look at the tragedies that occurred. 2 Jews murdered, a Muslim, and a Christian, a security guard. Right?
Yeah.
And maybe there's a message there that we need to find a way to work together, to help one another. There's a lot of destruction in this world, but we got to create paths where we can walk with one another as family.
And I was happy that the elected officials in their speeches, at least in the funeral that I attended, they didn't politicize. They gave honor to the person whose life was being celebrated. Quite often individuals can, take a turn and bring in. I will say the imam made it a point to raise the issue of what was going on in the lives that are being lost in Gaza and the starvation and all that. I mean, the imam did bring that up, but the elected officials, they stayed within the guardrails of the context.
Yeah.
And I thought that was important.
Well, you and I have learned over the years that when you have a funeral, let's pay attention to the individual and the family of the individual. And all of the other topics can be addressed at a later date, but not right now. This is all about the family, the police family, the immediate family, all of the people who are part of the extended family. Leave the topics that are on the front page of the papers. Save that for tomorrow, not for today. We're going to take a break. I'm sorry.
We're going to take a break? Okay,
Yeah.
We'll come back. And I'll do my by the way when we come back.
Okay.
With more of the Rev and the Rabbi right here on Red Apple Radio Network.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
I was deep in it, gaming on Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 7. Unfolding the screen made it twice as big and so immersive, I kinda lost myself. Might have trolled a little too close to the sun. Someone in the chat told me to touch grass, so I took my Z Fold 7 outside and kept playing. Still won, got a tan, and a nice little reset. Powerful processor, realistic graphics, you stay locked in, streak stays alive. Can your phone do that?
The new Galaxy Z Fold 7. Get yours at Samsung.com.
It's back to school season, and Clorox is donating 2 million disinfecting wipes to classrooms across America. Because back to school means things can get a little bit messy. Just ask kindergarten teacher Miss Gibson.
Give me just one Clorox wipe and I'm ready for glitter glue, exploded lunchbox yogurt, peanut butter handprints, runny noses, picking noses, rubbing noses.
Touching noses.
Thank you, Edward. Ooh, nap mats and lockers and tissue boxes. And
Clorox
scissors.
disinfecting wipes. Teacher's #1 wipe. Clean feels good. Based on unit sales data.
Building a portfolio with Fidelity Basket Portfolios is kind of like making a sandwich. It's as simple as picking your stocks and ETFs, sort of like your meats and other toppings, and managing it as one big, juicy investment. Now that's pretty good. Learn more at fidelity.com/baskets. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC. Member NYSE SIPC.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. When you visit the doctor, you probably hand over your insurance, your ID, and contact details. It's just one of the many places that has your personal info. And if any of them accidentally expose it, you could be at risk for identity theft. LifeLock monitors millions of data points a second. If you become a victim, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year at lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
The Rev and the Rabbi.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard. So before the break, I was going to mention that your guy, Curtis Sliwa, mayoral candidate for the city of
Wait a
New
minute,
York.
Rev. Our guy. He's here at WABC.
Our guy. Okay, our guy.
Yeah.
He was there.
Our
He
colleague.
was there, and he had a group of police officers surrounding him, and he was doing his thing. So I had to give him a mention.
Yeah. Look, I think, sadly, it takes crises, catastrophes to get people to see the humanity of the other. And if we could just move that a little bit earlier, if we could see that humanity before the tragedy happens, that there is beauty in other people. Let's not just focus on the ugliness, because I think there are some people. Social media is, we've said, a curse and a blessing. And the blessing is you can promote such beautiful thoughts. The curse is you can denigrate human beings with some of the most indecent thoughts. And I think we got to spend a little more time recognizing that there is goodness and greatness in people. And let's not overlook them. Let's not take them for granted until suddenly, all of a sudden, we say, oh, look what happened here. And then you hear all the things about the person that you didn't know before.
We treat each other differently. We create policy and legislation differently. We structure things differently when we put our humanity at the top of the list. It's when it's not at the top of the list that we end up with systems and structures and situations that marginalize and oppress. That's reality. It was interesting that the imam at the funeral was talking about Islamophobia, and the problem that his community faces that way. I attend an event amongst the Jewish community, and they're talking about anti-Semitism. So and if I go somewhere else, a Sikh service, I will hear the same thing. And it's like we still have this problem with what we call the other. And we have to get beyond that, Rabbi.
Look, we, on this day, we recall the devastation that took place with the temples. But we also talk about the dedication of those who said, and what are we going to do now? We're not going to stop being Jews. We're not going to stop having temples. It may not be those original temples, but we're going to create synagogues. We're going to create institutions of learning. The last page of Jewish history is not going to be written by the Romans or the Babylonians earlier. We are going to write all of the pages, and there's not going to be a last page. So I think when you look at it through that perspective, you realize, we have a challenge. And some people just want to tear us apart. They want to separate us from each other. You know, I often talk about the computer commandos. There are those who sit behind their computer screens and just send out some of the ugliest things. Of course, very often they're people without credentials who espouse all of their, their great worldviews. And they think there are those who really want to listen or read that stuff, and they don't. So, again, I like to surround myself with not only the critics, but the authors, those who are interested in writing new chapters.
Right. Beginning again, which is what the rebuilding of the temple was all about. It was about beginning again. What was lost, Rabbi? I mean, you lose the temple, this physical, sacred place that really symbolized the heart of the Jewish culture and Jewish faith.
So,
what did you lose? What did you lose
So
at that time?
let's bring it to a local place. I've seen over the years houses of worship that have been devastated by fires. And all of a sudden the community grieves. They say, my God, this is where we all came to pray. This is where we came to study. This is where our kids went to school. It was the focal point of Jewish life in that area. And then the question becomes, what do we do now? They didn't say we're going to stop learning and praying and educating. They said, what are we going to build now? So when you lose something, you lose that area that was, home for you. That was your spiritual home. But then you ask, and what's our next spiritual home going to be? Where is it going to be, right?
But before you go there, asking where will our next spiritual home be? How do we rebuild? You also go through a theological crisis. I mean, when I studied in seminary, the destruction of the temple, the Babylonian siege and destruction, it was a theological and spiritual crisis for the Jewish people. You start asking questions. Why? First of all, why did this happen? Why are we in this situation? Had God abandoned His people? Was the covenant broken? How could faith survive in a foreign land? Now you're in captivity. Talk about what those things mean to you.
That's a good point, because you find in Jewish teachings the question was raised: so why did these calamities happen to us? What did we do wrong that this was brought upon us? And there were those who theorized it was our disrespect for one another. We indulged in inappropriate, immoral activities. And I once said to the congregation, I notice we're not blaming the Babylonians or the or the Romans, but we're blaming ourselves for what they did to us. It's nice to have that introspection. It's nice to say what did we do wrong, but you also have to say, what? Maybe we weren't responsible. Maybe there are others who should take the blame for this. But again, we do have a responsibility for tomorrow. For our kids' sake, we have to make sure there's going to be a tomorrow. And that is why the Sabbath after Tisha B'Av next week is called the Sabbath of Comfort. And it's a very uplifting message. Let's comfort one another, because there's going to be a new day. And this, again, it's not the final, the Cardinal, I've often quoted the Cardinal, Good Friday is not the final day. You have Easter, you have rebirth, resurrection. The destruction of the temples is not the final day. You have the Sabbath of Comfort. And also the institutionalization of synagogues. Synagogues now appeared, in the diaspora. And the Babylonian Talmud, the Talmud that developed in Babylonia, the house, had even greater authority than the Jerusalem Talmud. Imagine that. What was taught outside of Jerusalem, had, was on a higher level of scholarship than what was being taught in Jerusalem. That's how you rebuild. You bring the best to wherever you are.
That's a very good sermon, Rabbi, because, of course, the synagogues that emerged is where we get the idea in our Christian faith of the local church, the parish, that comes from the idea of not having a temple in Jerusalem that we go to, but localizing our faith. I think you call it a minyan if you have 10 families.
Yeah, 10 individuals.
10 individuals that require to establish a synagogue. And these are traditions that are here active some 2,000 plus years later.
It's interesting because you mentioned, and we always talk about the importance of community. And we're living at a time when I think many young people don't see the need for belonging to a community. Was it bowling alone? Not joining a gym, but, hiring a trainer? Things that don't have that commitment to community. And then you find out, God forbid, there's some, cataclysmic event in your life. All of a sudden, we need people. We need others. So I think it's community that helps you get through these things.
Absolutely
right. You can't build. You can't just build alone.
Yeah, we're social beings. We are designed by God in our faith tradition and yours as well to need community. The key commandments: love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, but then love neighbor as self. So the whole idea of neighbor speaks of community, our need for community, and managing community, and that's how we're designed.
Look, wasn't it Abraham who argued with God and said, if there are 50 good people in the city and then 40 went down to 10, but didn't go lower than 10, because 10 was the minimal number necessary, like you said, a minion, for community. I think all of us, certainly as we get older, we realize we need the other. And unfortunately, as you mentioned earlier, we live at a time when it's hate the other. And religion says, wait, before you hate the other, you may need help from the other. So be very, very careful. Reserve the hatred for when it really requires it. But I think we use the word hate too often, too many times about too many people.
Rabbi, you're in the New Testament now. The story of the Samaritan, the Good Samaritan, was all about the least expected individual coming to the aid of the person that was hurt. And that says a lot.
Yeah.
We are all responsible. We are our brother's keeper.
Well, on that note, we're going to conclude because we've come to the end of the program. But it's been
end of the program.
Yeah. Well, but the end only for today.
Go?
Remember, we talked about the end, but then there's another. We're going to continue next week.
Another beginning, yeah. So thank you, our listeners, for joining us here every Sunday morning with the Rev and the Rabbi. We'll be back next time. Until then, may God richly bless you. Shalom.
Thanks for listening to the Rev and the Rabbi. You can hear the Rev and the Rabbi Sunday mornings at 7. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 350 plus programs at asuonline.asu.edu.